And it's also Thanksgiving Eve. Yes, we are on the eve of tryptophan hangovers, ladies and gentlemen. On the Hard Starboard Radio Network, blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Yeah, we got the turkey, we got all the fixings. How we're going to get it over to Cedar Ridge assisted living, I'm still not quite clear on, but I mean, we don't own any anti-gravity sleds, for example, but, well, I guess we'll juggle drumsticks and gherkins and whatever else we're taking. But that's for tomorrow. This is the Hard Starboard Radio Network. I am your host, Jasmius, your ruler, your benevolent despot, your fountain rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Guest call-in number 646-478-5068. Email address, jasmius@comcast.net, especially if you want any of the 200 episodes of Constitution Radio in podcast form. From programs run for 3.5 plus years on KCAA AM 1050. I am the archivist. I am the archivist. And if you want any of those, and you should have them already, but if you are a little behind the curve on that, or have just gotten behind schedule, send me an email, jasmius@comcast.net, JASMIUS, by the way, and specify the dates that you want. I'll be happy to send them to you. There are, of course, 6 1/3 plus years of podcasts awaiting download at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, the first 2 hours and kickoff of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, the pregame show, the tailgate party for Constitution Radio on KMET 1490 AM, Smart Talk Radio for the Inland Empire of Southern California, the Gibbs Pocket, as I prefer to refer to it, and globally at KMET1490AM.com. That's why Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs is the local show with the global footprint. But American Daily Review kicks it off, and like I say, help yourself to the 6 1/3 plus years of podcast. And, of course, where you are right now, whether you're listening live or on the podcast, at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, you will find 1 day short of 8.5 years worth of podcasts for your downloading pleasure, your education, edification, enlightenment, and entertainment in all of your life's endeavors. So get them all, get them while you can, because as I say, I have them all. I mean, if need be, I have all of those too, but those you can get online. Those you could get blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, and KMET1490AM.com for the podcasts of Constitution Radio since our debut on our new flagship station back on May the 2nd. Just go to the main page at KMET1490AM.com. Highlight the show's drop-down menu. Click on Saturday. That takes you to the Saturday schedule. Scroll down to Constitution Radio. Click on that. Takes you to the Constitution Radio show page in the lower left-hand corner below Mr. Gibbs's ruggedly handsome features. There's a box that says Podcast. Click on that. Takes you to the podcast page. Have at it, folks. Have at it to your heart's content. Over 6 months' worth, although given the 4 or 5 Saturdays we were preempted by exciting University of Redlands football, it might not technically be the equivalent of 6+ months worth, but get what you can while you can. You never know. Don't take anything for granted. Don't lollygag. You know, I mean, who knows? Skynet could gain self-awareness at any moment. The killer asteroid, the killer comet, excuse me. Forget asteroids. Comets are the things we got to worry about because they move so much faster than they come from out in the Oort cloud. So those are the comets are the things we have to worry about. And there could be one that's on its way right now. We'd never see it. Just boom. Ellie, extinction level event. Wouldn't that be eel or L? It could be the second E would be silent. I mean, her name wasn't Ellie McPherson. It was L. McPherson, wasn't it? E-L-L-E. So wouldn't it be the same with just one L? Or would that be eel after all, which has a totally different connotation? Oh, I don't know. You can think about that in your off time, meaning once the program is concluded. So you never know what might be coming. So get the podcasts now. Don't waste any more time. Download them all for your collection. I know. Someday they'll be in the Museum of Broadcasting, but you know, you can say you knew back when Jasmius was just a obscure, unknown, well, not completely unknown, but unknown outside of Hard Starboard Nation broadcaster struggling to make a name for himself, even in reflective terms, as the Pat Gray to Doug Gibbs's Glenn Beck. But, you know, see, that's one of the things about what Doug and I are doing. Douglas V. Gibbs, the American Freedom Alliance Fellow, the director for the Center for the Studies of the United States Constitution, which is just a shell at this point. I am in my 50s. He is right behind me in that regard. And so, you know, you hear the stories about how, well, you know, Glenn Beck struggled for 10 years before he made it. And the same thing with Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, and he got fired 7 times before he made it. And yeah, well, the thing is, we don't really have 10 years. I like to think that the last 4 1/4 years of Constitution Radio is when that started. So, I mean, like, if we got 5.5 more years to go, well, first of all, I hope not, because Mr. Gibbs will have died of starvation by then. So, you know, it would be nice if it could be fast-tracked, you know. It really would be nice. At any rate, that's what we're headed for. That's what our aspirations and ambitions are. I know it's mine. Be on a regular and a weekly syndicated radio program, nationally syndicated, even regionally syndicated. Whatever will pay me enough, even to pay my bills, keep from continuing to lose money. You know, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. That'd be a dream come true. It's about time I had a dream come true. I've mentioned this before about the last time that something proactively good happened to me 12 years ago. When I was hired at Pacific Northwest Baking Company, the same place under different management that destroyed my previous career in accounting and so on. But ever since then, the best that can be said is that bad things haven't happened to me until, of course, 2 1/4 years ago, and something really bad happened to me, and something irreparable. And so it would be nice to finally have a dream come true. Something proactively good happened to me. And I'm not even just referring to, like when the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl a couple of seasons ago. That qualified, but that was vicarious. That wasn't to me. It was the team, my favorite NFL team, but it wasn't to me personally. I'm talking about to me personally. Something proactively good Not just something bad not happening, something good happening. I may interest you to know that I was speaking or chatting with intern Nisius before the program, and she mentioned, I was speaking in the context of like professional voice work, like for commercials or announcing or what have you. And she said, "Well, I know now. Do you understand? She's about to get her bachelor's degree in music theater education. So I mean, it's not like she's got insider context or anything. But she said, "Well, I know some people. I have a network. I'll spread your name and what you've done and what you're doing around and see what comes up." And it's like, okay, never hurts to have some additional irons in the fire. So, but in the meantime, I spend each weekday afternoon / evening on the East Coast anyway with all of you in Hard Starboard Nation. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your ears and your brains, not only hearing but listening as well, paying attention to what we discuss each and every weekday on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. Now, I should mention, in terms of promotional items and schedule items, tomorrow I'm still not quite sure. I think see the Thanksgiving Day schedule tomorrow is that my family and I will be going over to have Thanksgiving dinner with my dad about 10 minutes from here, but that won't be until 5 o'clock, or I don't know if that means the idea is to go over there, to get over there at 5 o'clock, or to be ready to eat at 5 o'clock, or what. I'm going to exert my patriarchal authority and try to make that leaving after 5 o'clock, in which case I will be running a best of program tomorrow. And the way things are shaping up schedule-wise and stack-wise, that should work out. So tomorrow, best of Hard Starboard Radio, and back live for Open Thighs Friday on, of course, Open Thighs Friday. And then Saturday, I am flying solo on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. I am sitting in for Mr. Gibbs on Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, KMET 1490 AM. KMET1490am.com. So you will not want to miss that. This will be the 10th guest hosting gig that I have had on Constitution Radio over the past 4 1/4 years. So I will have something for y'all. And I'll try not to turn it into Hard Starboard Radio. We'll leave the pieball music. I won't have the full version of my entrance music, but we'll still have Constitution Corner. We'll still have the Constitution Quest question of the week. I don't know about a book of the week. I'll dispense with the book of the week. That's Alex Ferguson's gimmick. I don't want to infringe on that. And besides, having the whole 53 minutes to myself, I will just continue with the top few stories of the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. All-Star Collision, located at 522 Railroad Street in Corona, California. If you have a scratch on your door, a dent on your fender, an entire caved-in trunk, doesn't matter what it is, the Patriots at All-Star Collision are the only place to go. Why would you go anywhere else? Would you? I mean, why would you? No reason. Absolutely no reason at all. The web address, allstarci.com. The number, if you want to talk to a live Patriot, 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision. The Kings of Wreck and Roll. Now, they bring you the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. each and every week, and we will be going through them throughout the entire 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza with Jasmius at the helm in the center seat of the Starship Pistachio. No, not like, sorry, I forgot to mute that volume on my broadcasting computer. No, not like Chris Hemsworth was at the helm and the center seat of the Starship Kelvin in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. But no, it's boldly going where none have gone before on Constitution Radio. And preceded by American Daily Review, the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, 3 hours live. I'd say witness history, but this is the 10th time I've done it, so it's, it's not all that novel, but, you will enjoy it, as you always do, as I strive to inform and entertain at the same time, in my own inimitable fashion, as only I can do. Not even Limbaugh can do it the way I do it. Of course, Limbaugh is making $33 million a year, so that may not be all that bad a thing. But all I want to be able to do is pay my bills. I don't need to have a Learjet. I don't need to, have multiple houses. I just like to be able to go out for teriyaki for lunch every day if I so choose. That's all. In fact, that's what I find that is the thing that I miss the most. I don't live extravagantly. I don't have a big house. I don't have a particularly fixed-up house, for that matter. I mean, if I had the money, I'd refurbish the house and the property that I currently have. I wouldn't go out and buy a new house. I don't want to move. I'm perfectly happy where I am. Cars, well, counting my dad's pickup, we got 4 cars sitting in and around our property, so it's not like we need transportation. I've got a laptop, I've got a PC, I've got TV and cable TV, and I've 2 Seahawk jerseys, personalized, home and away. I don't know. What would you say? Like Seahawks season tickets? Well, I suppose that'd be cool. But I don't live extravagantly. I don't really want a whole lot more than what I have. I just don't want to lose what I have, which is, of course, the ongoing issue. So, it's funny. In fact, speaking to Mr. Gibbs yesterday, off the air, and he mentioned that a friend of his could get him a job 2 days a week, 16 hours a week, at $16 an hour doing data entry. Which, you can do the math, is about, around a little more than $1,000 a month. Man, sign me up for that. Data entry, that's right in my wheelhouse. That would go a long way toward making my ends meet. Like I say, I don't need much, but I need something. If I could get voiceover, actually doing paid voiceover work, announcing or what have you. Oh man, it'd be like Howard Wolowitz and his mechanical hand before he how that ended. Not ending that way, but you get what I'm saying. I trust. Oh, so, like I say, I need something, and I need something to go right, not just not go wrong, but something actually go right for me. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm waiting for. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm praying for. And I'm not going to say I'm owed it. Don't need any entitlement mentality getting between these particular 2 ears, but gosh, it sure would be nice. Now we have a stack to go through, ladies and gentlemen, and so What do you say we get started? You know what I mentioned about lunch? I'd like to be able to get, go out and, be able to go out for lunch every day like I used to. Of course, that's the path by which I ended up at 250 pounds. So obviously, I would have to accommodate that in other ways so that history didn't repeat itself. But just like what did I have for lunch today? I had a cup of soup, cup of noodles. That was my lunch. No kidding. Cup of noodles. That was it. And be able to go out and get teriyaki would be nice. I love teriyaki. I used to snarf it down every other day. Now I've had it like twice this year. So that would be a nice thing to be able to do. 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, which, by the way, is has a large, I think it's like 10-3 Republican-appointed majority. Nevertheless, unconstitutionally declared Wisconsin's abortion law unconstitutional. The alternate headline would be Planned Parenthood screws Scott Walker without protection. Makes me wish cheesehead Republicans had at least gotten their money's worth on the bill whose homicide the 7th Circuit upheld. The quote here is from Newsmax. A Wisconsin law that requires abortion providers to get admitting privileges at nearby hospitals is unconstitutional, a federal appeals court panel ruled Friday. So this is probably a sub-panel, 3 judges, Now that was it, folks. That was it. I mean, it required abortion providers to get admitting privileges at nearby hospitals for their patients, just in case something goes wrong. How could that possibly be a restriction on abortion, first of all? How could that be a restriction on abortion? That is putting the woman's health at the top of the priority list, is it not? So I would think, unless you're going to maintain the fiction that abortion has no risk to the mother, which would be a bald-faced lie. And that was it. No restriction on abortion, no banned after 20 weeks or after the 2nd trimester, or no parental notification, not even a requirement that the mother has to be shown an ultrasound picture of her child with his or her little beating heart and his or her 10 little toes and 10 little fingers. Just a requirement that aborticians guarantee hospital admittance for those same ex-mothers in case something goes Gosnellianly wrong. You can say without doubt or hesitation that this Wisconsin statute was all about safeguarding women's health. And yet even that was too much of a mortal affront to the sacred and sacrosanct Roe v. Wade. The most torturedly tangential legal argument imaginable, resuming the quote from Newsmax. The 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel's ruling comes in a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood and affiliated medical services. The groups argue that the 2013 law amounts to an unconstitutional restriction on abortion. Again, how? How is that a restriction on abortion? And it's not like there aren't restrictions on abortion on the books anyway. How is that one particularly egregious? The law has been on hold since a federal judge struck it down earlier this year. The law's supporters argue that the Republican-backed statutes would ensure continuity of care if a woman developed complications from an abortion and needed to be hospitalized. How? That's not a restriction on abortion. That is all about women's health. Unless the idea here is somehow to create the idea that there's absolutely no risk to the woman, to the mother from an abortion procedure. Are we to believe that? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Because it's not true. It's not remotely true. But the lawsuit said the statute would force Affiliated Medical Services clinic in Milwaukee to close because its doctors couldn't get admitting privileges. Why the hell could AMS not secure hospital admission privileges? Isn't that their problem? I mean, how is it they can't get secure hospital admission privileges? I mean, did they even try before getting on the horn to their shysters? Did their grisly reputation precede them? That in turn would lead to longer waits at Planned Parenthood clinics. Therefore, the lawsuit maintained the law amounts to an illegal restriction on abortions. Here's something else I don't understand about this. What was not Planned Parenthood, by this lawsuit, suing themselves out of additional business? Methinks they did not think that through before the lawfare reflex kicked in. It's still absurd, though. AMS, Affiliated Medical Services, is a bunch of slackers, so feticidal maniacs. I mean, so feticidal maniacs would have to wait a little bit longer to get vacuum sucked. But, I mean, they'd still get vacuum sucked or sliced and diced or acid douched or whatever. They wouldn't be denied their hallowed right to murder their offspring. U.S. District Judge William Connolly, Bill Connolly? Oh, it can't be the same William Connolly that I knew years ago. Sided with the abortion providers in March, saying the law served no legitimate health interest? Are you crapping me? That's a bald-faced lie. It flies in the face of the enormous health risks to women to which the abortion process exposes them, both during and in the remorseful, quaking aftermath. It's like aborticians don't really give a flying frack about the women, who are nothing more than a source of raw materials to them, as the Center for Medical Progress has amply shown us, illustrated, demonstrated over the past few months with their Planned Parenthood cannibalism film series. Just so they kill the next baby and keep that river of blood flowing at maximum capacity. So, let's add this up. The right to abortion, which does not in fact exist outside of the late William Brennan's well-merited coffin, has now been illegally and unconstitutionally amended to now be the right to a prompt and convenient abortion. And with Justice Weathervane Kennedy always tanned, rested, and ready To take a flamethrower to the founding document on moral issues, we can count on the Supreme Court of the United States being completely useless. Ironically, though, the introduction of the Bill of Rights to the states issue does not arise in this instance, since as the word abortion does not appear nor is even remotely implied anywhere in the 7 articles and 27 amendments, there's nothing saying one way or the other whether federal courts can dictate state law on this issue. You cannot, in other words, legally impose a non-existent federal right on any level, federal, state, or local. But they do have the power, though. Yes, indeedy. Even though the Wisconsin law does not, in fact, even slow down abortion, wouldn't it have been cheaper for Planned Parenthood to simply build some more clinics? Or was this a rare instance where reveling in their unchecked feticidal power outweighed their naked greed? Hold on. Bear with me a moment, ladies and gentlemen. I have some typos to fix. And it's down at the bottom here. And let me see here. Alright, where did I see that? Well, I can fix that. Good. There's one. There's one. Now, where's the other one? Here it is. There it is. Yeah, the Jack in the Box in that episode of Big Bang Theory where Amy Farrah Fowler was trying to cure Sheldon Cooper of his completion addiction. And they never... there was no comparison or parallel with sex in that little scene, and was there? You have to see it. It's on YouTube. Look it up. Well, this is not news per se. I mean, we've written about this and discussed this before, but just in case anybody is prone to forget, the Obama regime blatantly covered up how ISIS was and is kicking our asses in Syria and Iraq. Nothing new, as I say, and it's almost obligatory if he was going to keep this fraud, his phony war, his Sitzkrieg, going for the God-willing last 2.5 years of his misrule. You can't pretend to fight a war you're not actually fighting and actually produce victories on the ground. Sooner or later, it would get out that the Islamic State was unaffected by our supposed martial efforts and continuing to expand unchecked, unfettered, and functionally unopposed. And that would be awkward. So Obama lied. Like I said, this isn't really news. And he forced the entire U.S. national security apparatus to become flagrant liars as well. Newsmax provides the quote again. Intelligence analysts at U.S. Central Command were told in emails to hold back reports showing the true strength of the Islamic State, Fox News reports. Fox quoted a source close to CENTCOM as saying the emails contained the lines, "cut it out," and "toe the line." Barack Obama had been describing, oh shoot. How did I not See that. I gotta get rid of that real quick. Much better. Barack Obama had been describing ISIS as a JV squad and was painting a picture that it was being defeated. Instead, the group continued to gain more territory for its hardline caliphate in Iraq and Syria. An Obama-gone official told Fox News someone attempted to destroy those emails, which are now in the hands of the Obama-gone Inspector General. The IG probe was initiated following complaints that information had been changed to make it look like ISIS had been weakened more than it had actually been. Close quote. Anybody surprised by this? Stand on your head. So the White House ordered the Obama-gone and U.S. intelligence agencies to cover up his ISIS fraud, and then they ordered the Obama-gone and U.S. intelligence agencies to cover up the cover-up. In essence, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we endeavor to deceive. And now it's blown up in his face. Well, wait, strike that. It's blown up in Francois Hollande's face, but Obama could feel the heat all the way over here. But the heat is not enough for the American people to finally rise up and either force an actual war against ISIS or force him out of power altogether. And so the one will continue to ride his pro-jihad foreign policy straight into the next skyscraper, secure in the knowledge that none of the flaming jet fuel will singe him, and that however many thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of Americans have to be sacrificed to the fight against Islamophobia, they will not have been slaughtered in vain. But have no fear, ladies and gentlemen. Obama has already vowed to, I swear I'm not making this up, get to the bottom of his own cover-up. Can't he vary his material at least? It's just the same thing he said about IRS Gate when it first went public. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Nobody is angrier than I am. I read about this in the newspaper. Yeah, you know the drill. The worst part of this story, though, is that even the military and intelligence poobahs who didn't succumb to this totalitarian reality hijacking still don't get the truth about Islam. Quote, I think this issue of not meeting a narrative out of the White House, which meant don't talk about Islam, don't talk about this being a form of radicalization of the Islamic religion, which in fact it is. No, it's not. We'll get to that in a moment. Former Defense Intelligence Agency Director General Michael Flynn said, it is a cancer inside the Islamic religion, and the White House and the President, frankly, have not wanted to say that. Well, if they did say it, it would be wrong, because no, Director/General, radical Islam, pardon the redundancy, is not a cancer inside the Islamic religion. It is the Islamic religion. And there's another typo. There's another typo. Again. Oh. Okay, now that's fixed. That's right, General. That's right, Director. Radical Islam, whatever. It's not a cancer inside the Islamic religion. It is the Islamic religion. Global Islam is 10% violent jihadists and 90% jihad sympathizers, but they are all jihadists of one function or another because that's what the Quran tells them to do. There are many different kinds of jihad. There's jihad by immigration. There's jihad by deception. There's jihad by holy war. Jihad is bigger than just violent jihad. But every Muslim is commanded by the Quran to engage in one form or another of jihad. Flynn's crippling misconception is essentially the Bush 43 middle ground stance, which contributed mightily to his not getting the job done in the Middle East by leaving Iran and Syria unliberated, as well as trying to take the Wilsonian freedom as a desire of every human heart democracy shortcut, instead of the all-out war to crush Islam once and for all, that was and is actually necessary if Western civilization is to survive in the 21st century. You know, akin to how Germany was crushed on the battlefield and then denazified, and how the Japanese were crushed on the battlefield and then demilitarized after the West wiped both of them out during World War II. That's what we need. That's what we need. That's what needs to happen. Well, it was for a while, before Barack Obama threw away our hard-won victory, what we had done in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's what we could have done in Syria. That's what we could have done in Iran. Till we do, this problem's not going to go away. The Middle East needs to be de-Islamicized. Just like Germany was denazified and Japan was demilitarized after the Second World War. And it's about time we stop kidding ourselves that there are any shortcuts around that. Ironically, that is the one and only path to the kind of apostatization of Islam, culturally speaking, that the left demands we delude ourselves into believing is the reality on the ground today. And of course, the truth is 180 degrees the opposite. One is the narrow path to civilizational survival. The other, the road to cultural and physical destruction. But to borrow an Agent K line from Men in Black that excruciatingly fits Obama Middle East foreign policy in general and ISIS in particular, the only way these people can get on with their happy lives is that they do not know about it. Until we're messily slaughtered, that is. Then we won't know anything at all. And that suits Barack Obama just fine. I probably can't fit all of this in for the top of the hour break, but we'll see what progress we can make. And by the way, this is going to be a big part of Constitution Corner this Saturday on Constitution Radio with Jasmius. 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, KMET 1490 AM, KMET 1490 AM.com. The American Civil Liberties Union, or the American Communist Lackeys Union, if you go back to who founded this organization, that would be a vast improvement in truth in advertising. The ACLU has sued the state of Indiana to force Governor Mike Pence to allow the Syrian refugee invasion. Do you trust the ACLU to keep you safe from Islamic terrorists? I sure as hell don't. Or in other words, welcome, dear readers, to another edition of Constitutional Means Anything on the agenda of Barack Obama and the Left Theater. Today, courtesy of the ACLU, we revisit what the Supremacy Clause does and does not actually mean, with an Article 4, Section 4 chaser. Quote is from, again, Newsmax. The American Civil Liberties Union on Monday sued Indiana Governor Mike Pence over his refusal to allow refugees fleeing Syria's civil war to resettle in the state, saying his position violates federal authority in the United States Constitution. You can see how bass-backwards this is already. Governor Pence is one of 31 governors who have publicly called on Barack Obama to stop resettling Syrian refugees following the November 13th attacks in Paris that killed 130 people. The governor cited concerns that some refugees are associated with the Islamic State. In the lawsuit, the ACLU said decisions concerning immigration and refugee resettlement are exclusively the province of the federal government and cannot be dictated by state officials. Like I said, bass-backwards. Attempts to preempt that authority violate both equal protection and civil rights laws and intrude on authority that is exclusively federal, ACLU of Indiana Legal Director Ken Fox said in a statement. Well, no. They want it to be exclusively federal, but it's not. Wrong, wrong, wrong. First, let's take a look or revisit Article 4, Section 4, the pertinent part of it to this discussion. The United States shall, meaning the federal government, shall protect every state in this union against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. Doesn't that sound like terrorism to you? So far from being empowered to force states to be invaded by violent hostiles, the federal government is required to protect the states from both invasion and terrorism. And it has been conclusively proven that ISIS has massively infiltrated the Syrian refugee stream. So it is, in fact, Barack Obama who is violating his constitutional obligations, not, in this case, Governor Mike Pence. Furthermore, immigration is a concurrent power of both the federal government and the states. Indeed, the only passage in the founding document that specifically empowers the federal government on immigration matters is Article 1, Section 9, which states, and I quote, "The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person." This clause pertained to the Atlantic slave trade for historical reference. But here as well, the states clearly had the right of first refusal on immigration into their territories, a legal precedent if ever there was one. Lastly, let us recall precisely what the Supremacy Clause says and what it does not say. Article 6, Clause 2, Supremacy Clause, and I quote, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof," meaning constitutional laws. Doesn't apply to unconstitutional laws. Unconstitutional laws are supposed to be null and void. "And all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States," meaning federal laws and treaties, "shall be the constitutional federal laws and treaties, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. In other words, only constitutional federal laws are the supreme law of the land. And nothing in the Constitution empowers the federal government to force states to accept immigrants or refugees they do not want to accept. Ergo, Governor Pence and every other state chief executive in the country who does not wish to allow the Islamic State to smuggle jihadists into their communities to wreak havoc and mayhem on their citizens abso-damn-lutely well have the legal and constitutional authority to close the metaphorical gates and tell Barack Obama, "This far, no further!" But I'm sure the ACLU has judge-shopped quite effectively, and while the 7th Circuit has a 9-3 Republican-appointed majority with 2 vacancies, this is the same 7th Circuit that sided with Planned Parenthood yesterday, or rather Monday, as we discussed earlier in the hour here. So, you know, your mileage may vary. Okay, here we go. I'm just getting the ad cue ready to go. I just hope this case reaches the Supreme Court while there are any federal judges left alive to hear it. We'll be back with hour number 2 right after this. Back with hour number 2, the Hard Starboard Radio Network. But it doesn't play it. Oh, crap. Google doesn't have an English to Klingon translator. They have it for, you know, terrestrial languages. And they have a thing you could click where there's audio of somebody pronouncing it in the target language, but they don't have one for Klingon, so that's kind of disappointing. Just right as the bumper music was playing, I thought, oh, I wonder if they have English to Klingon. If Google has an English to Klingon translator, where I could listen to the actual Klingon, but no such luck. I guess Howard Wolowitz hasn't gotten around to inventing that yet. Oh well, we will soldier on. I know. Marry up! That's enough in Klingon. Or actually, it's Tlingen Hall is the actual name of the Klingon language, but yeah, they never mentioned that on Big Bang Theory, now did they? Mm-hmm. Even though Howard Wolowitz had his wedding invitations in Klingon, and they didn't know that little nuance that it's not actually called Klingon or Klingonese, it's Tlingen Hall. I suppose that's the Klingon Monty Hall. I don't know. What's behind door number 3? Well, in this case, it's the Turks shooting down a Russian bomber. This is the second Russian warplane. It was a Sukhoi 24 Fencer bomber. The first one, which was several weeks ago, was a MiG-29 flanker fighter. And now this is what I wrote about that and said about that 6 weeks ago at politicalpistachio.com. Turkey, if you check your programs, is anti-Assad. Russia and Iran are pro-Assad. And now they're shooting at each other. The Turks vow to shoot down more Russian warplanes if they violate Turkish airspace. The Russians promise it will never happen again, despite the fact that it has happened repeatedly and there's no reason to believe it will not continue. Technically, in fact, Russia and Turkey are now in a state of war. And since Turkey is technically still a member of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that means Russia and NATO are technically in a state of war, which means Russia and the United States are technically in a state of war. Now, that was 6 weeks and change ago. Well, now Turkey has made good on their threat against what Vladimir Putin vowed would never happen again, but has been happening repeatedly and consistently. I know. I wish I could get away from Newsmax as the source of the quote, but fact of the matter is, it's from Newsmax. Turkish fighter jets shot down a Russian warplane, as aforementioned, a Sukhoi 24 Fencer bomber, near the Syrian border on Tuesday after repeated warnings over airspace violations. But Moscow said it could prove the jet had not left Syrian airspace. It was the second time in a month a NATO member's armed forces have downed a Russian or Soviet military aircraft since the 1950s. 1950s. Let me say that and emphasize that again. Since the 1950s. When Russian and Turkish assets fell on fears of an escalation between the former Cold War enemies. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Russian President, I always have trouble with that word, Vladimir Putin accused Turkey of being accomplices of terrorism, warning of very serious consequences for relations. We understand that everyone has their own interests, but we will not allow such crimes to take place, Putin said at talks with Jordanian King Abdullah in Sochi. Remember the site of the 2014 Winter Olympics? We received a stab in the back from accomplices of terrorism. That's pretty strong language, diplomatically speaking. That was certainly a much angrier reaction than the Kremlin evinced 6 weeks ago. Since the MiG-29 Fulcrum was shot down last month, Putin looked to be pivoting off of that incident to draw the Turks away from NATO and into the Russian orbit. Yesterday's downing of the Sukhoi 24 Fencer, which killed one of its two occupants, would appear to at least put that psyop on hold. Now, perhaps the Russian strongman is harumphing a bit louder to remind the Turks of which country in this equation is the strong horse. But this reminds us once again that a Russo-Turkish war means a Russo-NATO war, which means a Russo-American war. Unless NATO opts to expel Turkey out of fear of that conflict, in which case we would have finished making another not informidable, especially now that Barack Obama has denuded U.S. military capabilities, Middle East enemy, and lost the northern air base at Incirlik that we had finally succeeded in wheedling the Turks to reallow us to use. But Russia and Turkey would still be at war. The focus on Syria and ISIS would be completely lost, and Tsar Vlad would be highly unlikely to let us off the hook for what the Turks have done in their capacity as a NATO member state, even though Obama has forfeited all U.S. influence in that part of the world, and every other part, really. Viva Smart Power! The Turks appear to be at least somewhat alarmed, and you can understand why. This is from Reuters. Turkish F-16 Falcons warned the jet over the airspace violations before shooting it down, the military official told Reuters. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, or Davutoglu, I never know how to pronounce Turkish, Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has spoken with the Chief of Military Staff and the Foreign Minister about the developments on the Syrian border The Prime Minister's office said in a statement, without mentioning the downed jet. Sounds like Davutoglu took both his subordinates to the proverbial woodshed, as in, you what? He has ordered the Foreign Ministry to consult with NATO, the United Nations, and related countries on the latest developments, his office said. In other words, the foreign policy equivalent of firing up the bat signal. John Bolton thinks we should preemptively tell Putin to back off any thoughts of retaliation, which is both 2 years too late policy-wise and many, many metaphorical dollars short, since we have no practical means of backing up such a quasi-ultimatum, even if there was the slightest possibility that Barack Obama might do so. And there's not. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, is of the opinion that such an ultimatum is unnecessary because Putin won't press his luck. This quote is, well, it's back at Newsmax. At the end of the day, although Vladimir Putin is a gangster and a criminal, he's also a geopolitical actor who makes decisions on a cost-benefit analysis, the Florida Republican senator told Fox News' Happening Now program. He will have to save face, but ultimately he won't test the alliance if the alliance stands up to him, because he would lose in that confrontation, and that would be a bigger setback for him. Close quote. We wish. I don't think Putin would lose in that confrontation, even if we, my apologies, NATO, even if NATO did stand up to him, which is in other words the United States, because the Russians, in concert with the Kremlin's Chi-Com allies, have military superiority over the United States. I wrote about that 2 months ago. More than 2 months ago. Discussed it. I don't know if I had a chance to discuss it here on the air, but I wrote about it at politicalpistachio.com 2 months ago. In fact, the post was entitled Red China and Russia Building Stealth Killers. They can detect fifth-generation aircraft, in other words, which wasn't supposed to happen for, another 15 years? Amazing what a little Edward Snowden can do to speed up that timetable. To say nothing of its other 27 pathetic, toothless, defenseless member states. And, of course, there's no way in 72 blue hells that Barack Obama is ever going to stand up to Vladimir Putin, other than in that faculty lounge lizard pedantry of his that might split France off from NATO and into the Russian orbit in Turkey's place. Remember, Francois Hollande is trying to put together a grand alliance which would include the United States and Russia to fight the Islamic State, and he can't get it done because Barack Obama will not let go of Assad must go, Assad must go, Assad must go. Putin ain't going to let Assad go. That's why he's in Syria in the first place. I mean, I'm telling you, each and every step of this process, Vladimir Putin is humiliating Barack Obama. He's outmaneuvering Barack Obama. He's easily, just embarrassingly manipulating Barack Obama. Because Barack Obama is so easy to manipulate. I mean, I honestly, when you really stop and think about it, I honestly don't know how it is that John Boehner and Mitch McConnell have lost to Barack Obama at every turn. Barack Obama is so easy to manipulate, it isn't even funny. His ego is the biggest target in the cosmos. And that's what Vladimir Putin uses. He knows how to play Obama like a 10-cent flute. Does it all the time. I tell you, you want a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You know, finally, The Rock has come back home. He used to have a family. He had a lot of famous catchphrases, but there's one in particular that I want to talk about right now. He used to have a famous catchphrase he would use on hapless WWE, well, WWF back then, announcers and opponents. Basically, he would get them talking about, he would say, well, what do you think about this? The Rock wants to know what you think about whatever. The opponent or the announcer would start to say, well, this is what I think, and then he'd interrupt and say, it doesn't matter what you think! On the world stage, Vladimir Putin is The Rock, and Barack Obama is his victim. And that stage is in the process of burning down in a Turkish minute. And by the way, you want to know what Barack Obama engaging in muscle flexing amounts to? Or what form that takes? He actually said yesterday that his Greenapalooza Global Climate Change Summit in Paris is the ultimate rebuke to the terrorists of the Islamic State. I crap you not. Oh, brother. We talked about this yesterday, and it's the title item on the stack today. Now, I wouldn't make too much of it yet. But in Iowa, anyway, Ted Cruz is blowing past both Ben Carson and Donald Trump, interestingly enough. Here's what I said, or I wrote 4 days ago at politicalpistachio.com. On the one hand, this is a huge sign of progress, and we discussed this yesterday, on the Republican electorate finally shaking off its "we need an outsider who has no idea what he's doing" mantra. And on the other hand, it's shooting down the only candidate in the field that has actually surpassed the lone Democrat mole candidate, referring to Dr. C. So is this truly progress, or is this the conservative electorate, in Iowa at least, splintering again while Donald Trump cruises to the GOP nomination? Well, that question appears to have been seismically answered, again, in Iowa, at least. Politico breaks the Newsmax streak to provide the quote in this instance. Ted Cruz, buoyed by Tea Party support and the backing of the conservative wing of the Republican Party, has surged to a virtual tie with Donald Trump in the first caucus state of Iowa, according to the results of a Quinnipiac University poll surveying likely Republican caucus goers released on Tuesday. Trump took 25% of support, followed by 23% who opted for the freshman Texas senator, more than doubling his support in the same poll from October when he earned just 10%. Trailing the two leaders is Ben Carson, who dropped from first to third, falling 10 points to 18%. End of quote. Of the top three, here are the changes in the Quinnipiac poll over the past month. Cruz has gained 13 percentage points. Ben Carson has dropped 10 percentage points. Donald Trump has gained 5 percentage points. So, if you add up what Cruz and Trump have gained, that's almost twice what Carson lost. So, that tends to suggest that Cruz especially, but Trump to a lesser extent, has gained additional support, whether from other Republican candidates or from the undecided column, and there doesn't appear to be, there's very little, it's low single digits as far as undecideds. Although it's almost 60% of Iowa voters still say that they could change their minds. Who knows how likely that is. Again, I can see the superficial rationale of the shift from Carson to Cruz. The Islamic State's attack on Paris and al-Qaeda's attack on the Malian capital over the past couple of weeks have boosted or boosted the perceived importance of perceived strength over steadiness and calm in the leadership trait goody box. I could believe that rationale was more than just superficial if Trump had lost 10 points as well to either Cruz or Marco Rubio, but that's not the case. Trump gained ground, despite being as big a foreign policy know-nothing as Dr. Carson. Which tells me this shift isn't nearly as much about foreign policy experience as it is Republican voters' flawed belief, we talked about it yesterday, that what we need is a fight president who shoots off his mouth without being able to cash the checks his pie hole would be writing. That, of course, is not true strength, because as we're all supposed to have learned sometime in childhood, if you're really, truly tough, you don't have to go around proving it to everybody you meet. And you don't prove it by your mouth, you prove it by your actions. Now, Iowa Pundit at hotair.com made a good point yesterday about Senator Cruz being the biggest beneficiary of Trump's presence in the race, because against nobody else could Cruz be contrasted as being a reasonable alternative. But I'm detecting the same disheartening vibe developing as it did in the fall of 2011, as one conservative challenger after another rose up seemingly to take on the establishment's Mitt Romney, only to fade after a few weeks. Ben Carson's surge past Trump seemed to have staying power, arising in late August and lasting through September and October. But post-Paris, his flavor of the month is fading, or favor of the 2 months. And now the Cruz rise looks like he's simply taking his turn in the spotlight, after which he'll dwindle back to the pack as well. I mean, I hope and pray I'm wrong about that. And bear in mind that I'm no fan of Ted Cruz's temperament or electability. I frankly don't think he has a presidential temperament, and I don't think he's electable either. Not because of an ideology, but because of his temperament and well, quite honestly, I don't think he could unify the Republican Party. I really don't. I think I think the establishment, the rhinos, the moderates they would flock over to Hillary Clinton or whomever, or just stay home. I don't think did anybody out there think Ted Cruz could unite the Republican Party behind him? Because if you do, then you got a more vivid imagination than even I do. I just don't see that happening. I mean, I hope but I mean, Cruz would be better than Donald Trump. I'll guarantee you that. I mean, I hope and pray that I'm wrong about that Trump can be overcome, or that there's still time for Marco Rubio to get his turn and turn it into a true turning point if Cruz can't do it. But I'm growing less and less able to convince myself of that possibility, rather like the Seattle Seahawks' vanishing playoff chances, actually. But even if Cruz were to win the Iowa caucuses, the same additional argument would apply of the previous two Iowa winners, Mike Huckabee in 2008, Rick Santorum in 2012, going nowhere after their standalone triumphs, their evangelical cred not carrying over to any other state. Cruz would presumably have a better chance of crossing over like that, but we'll have to see if that manifests itself in national and other state surveys as it did with Ben Carson. Supposedly, over half of Iowa voters, as I say, have not made up their minds completely yet, so theoretically all of this could still turn upside down. But polling is about trends, ladies and gentlemen, and not voter fickleness, and the trends are not encouraging. Not by a long shot. Well, where are we in the stack here? Okay, well, we might have a little bonus time before program ends today, draws to a close. Who is Kamala Harris, ladies and gentlemen? Well, people in California know who Kamala Harris is. She's the state's attorney general. She's also the senator California deserves. I'm sorry to say. And bear in mind, I live in a state represented in the United States Senate by Maria Can't Vote Well and Peppermint Patty Murray. So I'm not saying that in any kind of smug sense. It's more like, hey, I feel your pain, California. I really do. State Attorney Generalist Kamala Harris is what Barack Obama was before the operation. As a matter of fact, if you put a picture of Kamala Harris and Barack Obama next to each other, in the context of gender reassignment surgery, you'd be hard-pressed to tell which was the before and which was the after. It could go either way. Unfortunately for her and him, gender reassignment does not adjust attitudes. The quote is from thehill.com. The California Attorney General, who has, of course, close ties to Barack Obama, gee, what was your first guess? Remains the prohibited. I mean, she even has a funny name, Kamala. Remember Kamala, the Ugandan giant from the back in the day in World Wrestling Federation? You know, the guy who came out, big fat beer gut, pretended to be a African savage. He come out, he would slap his hands on his big fat beer belly. So, I mean, her funny name is her first name, whereas in his case, it was more his last name. But same idea. I wonder. Well, no, she wouldn't have a maiden name. She wouldn't take her husband's name. I wouldn't think. Anyway, the California Attorney General, who has close ties to Barack Obama, naturally, remains the prohibitive favorite to win the Well, there's another typo I've got to fix, and of course, in this case, I have the time in which to do it. And tell me the media doesn't need more editors, or editors who know what they're doing anyway. Kamala Harris remains the prohibitive favorite to win the Democrat nomination to succeed retiring Senator Barbara Boxer, California, and win election to the Senate, but the problems are leading to calls for additional changes. Critics point to Harris's own personality as the reason for some of the problems. Here we go. She's perceived as very, very difficult to work for. Oh, boy, I get that. Let's just leave it at that. But I hear you. One strategist familiar with the campaign told The Hill, she does not have real relationships and partnerships. She has acquaintances. In other words, she's a bitch. Can we just throw that out there, get that out of the way, all agree on that particular point? Here she is. She's running for Senate. As an African-American woman, she should be raising gobs of money, the source said. The fact that she's raising $1.5 to $2 million a quarter is absurd. Now, you may say, well, $1.5 to $2 million a quarter for a Senate race, that's not too bad. Remember, we're talking California here. You know how many major media markets there are in California? Good heavens. I mean, even beyond San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Oakland. How many other big towns, big cities are there in California? I mean, running for Senate in California is not like running for the Senate in Wyoming, okay? or North Dakota or South Dakota. It's another league as far as fundraising is concerned. And $1.5 to $2 million a quarter in California isn't going to get the job done. You know, it's like I've always said about money in politics, and I always go back to that line Peter Pevensy's at the end of Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where his centaur, he's looking out at at Jadis the White Witch's army that's much larger than the Narnian forces at his command, and his centaur lieutenant turns to him and says, "Sire, numbers do not win a battle." And Peter, never taking his eyes off the opposing forces, the opposing army in front of him, says, "No, but I bet they help." And that's the same thing with money in politics. I mean, money in politics, having a bigger war chest does not guarantee victory. I mean, there are plenty of examples of lesser funded candidates riding the lightning bolt, so to speak, catching lightning in a bottle, catching momentum, right place at the right time, etc., 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 and other factors offsetting that. But all things being equal, you really would like to have the bigger war chest. And like I say, $1.5 to $2 million a quarter, keeping in mind that you're spending money at the same time. And that's not going to get the job done. No, you might be asking yourself, why is her fundraising that pathetic? I mean, how can that be? Well, it's real simple. She won't hold her hand out. She won't schmooze. She won't troll fundraisers, and she won't pass the tin cup. She expects it all to be handed to her by divine right. Obama donors and bundlers to instinctively bow down to her as they have to Barack Obama for all these years. And that they're not is, I admit, an at least moderate miracle, seeing as she's the synthesis of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. She expects fundraisers who helped Obama to help her. She gets upset when donors don't flock to her. It drives her crazy that she actually has to meet and talk with people, the source added. Well, if she's the synthesis of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, maybe that does help explain it. She's Hillary Clinton without the name. Because I guarantee you, without that name, who would flock to Hillary Clinton? There's nothing about Hillary Clinton that makes her a candidate that anybody would vote for. It's that name. It's the Clinton connection, La Clinton Nostra, the Clinton machine. Kamala Harris doesn't have that. Kamala Harris has two things going for her. She's black, so she's a minority, and she's a woman. That's it. It's the only thing she has going for her, and her connections to Barack Obama. And she's expecting that to just shake loose, to rainmake, to shake loose about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars, just floof. It's not happening. It's not happening because who the hell is Kamala Harris? You the daughter of that big fat wrestler from the WWF in the mid-'80s? Who the hell are you? Nobody knows who she is. And yet she's expecting everything to be handed to her. I throw in a slam on California having the same dopey open primary system that Washington does, my state. But given that the Republican Party in California is essentially dead, suicide, really, it probably doesn't matter at this point. So here's your choice to replace the national embarrassment of Senator Don't Call Me Ma'am, Barbara Boxer. Acapulco Golden Staters, here's your choice. Kamala Harris, a.k.a. Barack Obama in drag, or Loretta Brixey, her maiden name is Sanchez. The woman who destroyed B1 Bob Dornan's congressional career via flagrant voter fraud, if you will recall. Talk about a triangle of doom. I mean, at least up here, we'll be able to actually put up a Republican to get ritualistically butchered by Peppermint Patty. Oh, my. Oh, no, okay. Now, after Barack Obama gave the Iranian oligarchy nuclear weapons this summer, gave their nuclear weapons program his blessing, with no means of verification, no means of ensuring compliance, and even if there was compliance, why would the Iranians not want to comply with the deal that Barack Obama gave them? Because the deal gives them everything they want and more. $150 billion freed up and previously frozen assets, lifting of all economic sanctions. I mean, don't even get me started on that topic again. And so you would think that, well, the Iranians are our friends now, right? Oh, well, you just haven't been paying attention if you believe that. Here's the latest in the burgeoning Iranian-American alliance. Iranian hackers attack the State Department. I admit that's awfully low-hanging fruit. I mean, it's not like that's any challenge. That's probably the first chapter of training of hacking as far as the Iranians are concerned. I mean, wasn't giving the nukes, or the mullahs nukes, supposed to get them to leave us alone at least? Didn't Barack Obama make them our friends? What the hell? Back to Newsmax we go for the quote. American officials and private security groups say they see a surge in sophisticated cyber espionage by Iran with a series of cyber attacks against State Department officials. How can this be? The New York Times reports that the latest information on the cyber attacks comes just 4 months after a historic accord with Tehran to launch its atomic ambitions. Pun most definitely intended. Though the Iranian cyber skills are not yet comparable to those of Russia or Red China, or North Korea, still, American officials have concluded that cyber espionage is becoming a tool to obtain the influence that many in Iran hoped the nuclear program would give the country. End of quote. Well, Newsmax, you speak of it as an either-or proposition. Clearly, they're building upon the momentum of having skunked Barack Obama at the negotiating table, expanding into every possible tool of warfare to use against the pitiful, helpless former giant that they most definitely have on the run. And this is Foggy Bottom we're talking about. An organization that won't even use the free antivirus software, or won't even use free antivirus software, and is to cybersecurity what Miley Cyrus would be to a convent. You know, loose as a goose. Which means the mullahs have looted a hell of a lot more than just social media content in the email archives of high-ranking State Department officials. Here's a thought. If the Iranians want to gain access to U.S. secrets, why aren't they just contacting their Russian and Chi-Com allies and requesting that they send over a copy? Or would that even be more difficult than just directly helping themselves? Oh, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this on the air or not. I tell you what, folks, it symbolizes everything. Have you ever seen the Godzilla facepalm? I posted it at politicalpistachio.com yesterday. The subcaption says, when Godzilla gives you the facepalm... Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Almost there. Almost there. Almost there. When Godzilla gives you the facepalm, you know the fail is epic. And I gotta scroll back up here so that I am prepared for the next bump. Here's why we're losing to ISIS, folks. This is... Sorry, had to blow my nose. Not supposed to do that on camera, but I'm not supposed to do that on the air either, but, well, live radio, folks. I promise I won't do that on Saturday, although you start doing things, they become habitual, but I don't think that 4 days is enough time for that to become a habit. Anyway, this is symptomatic. I mean, if you want to know Barack Obama's phony war in a nutshell, this is it. Read it, listen to it, and literally weep. Or crap your pants, whichever works best for you. Quote us from Newsmax. The U.S. military intended to destroy every truck during a second wave of attacks on ISIS-controlled oil tankers in Syria this weekend. Army Colonel Stephen Warren, spokesman for the U.S. coalition fighting the insurgents, said Tuesday. But they ran out of ammunition first. Go! The desire was to destroy every single truck there, Warren said at a news briefing. Can you imagine being this guy and have to go out and report this? Man, I do. You gotta get combat pay for this, I wrote. The desire was to destroy every single truck, Warren said at a news briefing, where he played video of ISIS fuel tankers either being shot by machine gun fire from the air or being bombed, reports CNSnews.com. All of the trucks were targeted, Warren said, showing a video with the good shots that you'd like. They ran out of bleeping ammunition. Oh, my goodness gracious. Apparently, we didn't run out of warning leaflets, though. If you Google Christian terrorism, you're probably a jackass to begin with. But if you do, bidden not by your own drive to jackassery, but by the natural curiosity inspired by, podcasts like this one, you'll find lots of left-wing trollery about how the worst terrorist attacks on American soil have been committed by Christians. Much of it is tendentious, question-begging twaddle. But I really don't want to waste a lot of time on whether Tim McVeigh was a Christian or not, and he really, really was not. What I find interesting is that many of the same people who clutch their pearls at the mere suggestion that Islamic terrorism has anything to do with, what's that word again? Islam, seem to have no problem making the case that Christian terrorism is like a real thing. Remember how so many liberals loved Obama's sophomoric and insidious tirade at the National Prayer Breakfast last spring about not getting on our high horses about ISIS's atrocities in the here and now because medieval Christians did bad things 1,000 years ago? They never seemed to think that argument through. Leaving out the ass-aching stupidity of the comparison, it actually concedes the very point Obama never wants to concede. By laying the barbaric sins of Christians 1,000 years ago at the feet of Christians today, he implicitly tags Muslims with the barbarism committed in their name today. Which is not inaccurate. Now, I see no need to wade too deeply into theology here, but I think I am on very solid ground when I say that Islamic terrorism draws more easily and deeply from the Quran than Tim McVeigh drew from the Christian Bible. Of course, you're free to disagree and be wrong. In a free society, everybody has the right to be wrong in their opinions, but don't tell anyone at Yale that. Last week, Hillary Clinton said, "Let's be clear, though. Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism." That's exactly how she said it, too, by the way. Now, understand, unlike some people who email me in all caps, I have no problem with politicians saying Islam is not our adversary. They're stupid, they're wrong, but they can say it. It's the second part of that Hillary quote that I have trouble with. Yes, some, well, you remember, there are violent jihadists and there are other types of jihadists, but all Muslims are jihadists. Just remember that. Let's see. Let's stipulate. No, let's not stipulate that because it's not true. It is simply a lie, an obvious, glaring, indisputable, trout-in-the-milk lie that Muslims have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. Simply put, this is nonsense. But it's not just nonsense. It is highly refined nonsense. If nonsense were radioactive, you could dump a barrel of it in a centrifuge, wait a few weeks, and out would come the claim that Islamic terrorism has nothing to do with Islam. Just off the top of my head, it's my hair, actually, but figuratively speaking, off the top of my head, the jihadists say they are motivated by Islam, and they are. Read the Quran. They shout Allahu Akbar whenever they kill people. Moderate Muslims in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere have been funding Islamic, violent jihadists around the world and for nearly a century. Just the other morning in Mali, last Thursday, terrorist gunmen reportedly released their hostages, but only the ones who could quote the Quran from memory. The leader of ISIS has a PhD in Islamic studies and openly talks about restoring the caliphate. Oh, one other thing. The Islamic State is called the Islamic State. I used to eat at a restaurant called Burrito Brothers. Saying the Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam is like telling someone eating a burrito they bought at Burrito Brothers that Burrito Brothers has nothing whatsoever to do with burritos. Like many other highly enriched radioactive substances, this nonsensical notion is weaponizable. It is dangerous. I would like to think that if you had an honest conversation with Hillary Clinton away from the cameras, she would say something like, "Of course Islamic terrorism has a lot to do with Islam, but we can't say that publicly because we have to isolate the radicals, not radicalize the moderates, even though it's really all the same." This is an entirely indefensible position intellectually. And it doesn't make this isn't Islamic claim any less of a lie. And what makes the lie dangerous, very dangerous, is the possibility that, to borrow a phrase from Barack Obama, these people believe their own BS. The danger is twofold. On the one hand, if you engage an enemy without actually understanding its motivations and ambitions, you will inevitably screw it up because you'll be constantly surprised by the facts on the ground. Know your enemy, Sun Tzu, first rule of the art of war. As Irving Kristol once said, when we lack the will to see things as they really are, there is nothing so mystifying as the obvious. On the other hand, if you're trying to rally political support for your strategy, while at the same time giving the public every reason to believe you're operating from a home base in fantasy land, only fellow BSers and fools will rally to your banner. And you'll lose the confidence and trust of those people who see through the fog of bovine excrement. That's about all further I can go with the G file from last Friday. For now, anyway. The FBI and the Homeland Security are giving unspoken or unspecified, unspecified warnings of terrorist attacks over the Thanksgiving holidays, the next few days. They have nothing concrete about any specific attack, about anything specific, but they're warning of attacks, which tells me they don't know what the heck they're doing. They don't even have the resources to find out what's going on. And yet, they're warning of attacks, which is probably just a fig leaf, trying to cover their rear ends in case there is an attack. Hey, we warned about something unspecified out there, maybe, kind of, sort of, somewhere. But next few days, fortunately, intern Misius got here without incident last night. But 47 million people traveling, you might want to think about staying where you are and staying home and not going to social events. In fact, any public events. Just close it all down. Turn it into Fortress America. Oh, but that means the terrorists have won! Well, it also means we all live, too. Because Barack Obama has made Fortress America impossible, folks. But have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the turkey. Enjoy the tryptophan high and hangover. And the stuffing and the gherkins and the olives and the mashed potatoes and the cranberry sauce. Enjoy it all, folks. We'll see you live back on Friday. Give thanks for all you have and your loved ones. See you Friday.